I'm Evie. I am the owner and head coach of Holistically Restored. I work with women primarily on hormone health, thyroid health, hormone coaching, weight management, things like that. So I'll do an intro as to who I am, and then I want to start with some questions actually, because I have an idea of what I wanted to talk about, but I really want this to be beneficial for you. So if there's something that you wanted to ask questions about, or something that you really want to kind of get the conversation going, we'll start with that. That way I can tie into what I was planning on talking about and answering your questions. And then at the end, we'll also finish up with any questions you have as well. And then I do have a booth out there as well, so feel free to come stop and say, hey, learn a little bit more about what I do, maybe ask specific questions to you. And then I have some samples of electrolytes, and then some ideas of what testing looks like when people do functional medicine testing with me too. So I'll get started with, hi, come on, and we just got started. So like I said, I'm Evie. I'm the owner and head coach of Holistically Restored. So this is kind of like the professional background of, I have a master's in health education. I'm certified through functional diagnostic nutrition. So through them, I have access to a medical director board that I work with and go over lab work, consult with, doing consulting for hormonal replacement therapy as well. So I do a lot with the functional medicine director there too. Really, I tell people I got into all of this really out of necessity, because when I was 17, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. So I have Hashimoto's, and at the time I just was told, you're going to take medication the rest of your life. We'll see you every 6 months when you get new blood work, and there was nothing else that was provided to me. So it was really, at the time I didn't care. I was starting college. I was like, whatever. But then 10 years into that, I was like, okay, I'm gaining weight. Like, my periods are irregular. I'm having a lot of gut issues. And then like depression started to set in, and I was like, this is just not the way that I want to live my life. I'm in my mid to late 20s, and I'm put on all these medications, and I don't want that. So I decided to shift gears, and I had heard about this functional medicine practitioner, and I was like, I don't know, I'm going to give it a shot. Like, everything else I'm doing isn't working, so I might as well switch gears. And working with him, I really learned a lot about different ways and alternative ways to support the body that I've never been exposed to, and I really enjoyed that. And so I switched gears. I was a special ed teacher, so decided to quit teaching and started my own business, and started health coaching. So through that, I really learned a lot in the process of working through it with myself, but then now working with clients over all these years. So again, working on hormone management, thyroid management, gut management, weight management, and really how all those are all connected. Because a lot of times people are like, I just have that last 10 pounds to lose and I can't get it off. Well, a lot of times that's where we come in, of like, what's going on underneath the surface that's causing that to really stick around. And then recently in the past year, I've actually added another coach, Hannah. She is on maternity leave. We actually had babies 2.5 weeks apart, so mine's 11 weeks, and hers is like 8.5 weeks. So she's not with me today, but I do have another coach that works with me, and then my fiance is out there. He does the strength training programming for clients. So we do offer that as well, and I'll get into kind of what a package looks like for everyone. So you could go to the PDF if possible. So before we dive into what I was planning on talking about, what questions or maybe ideas or anything regarding hormones, gut, do you have coming into this? That way I can make sure I cover that while also talking about what my original thought was. So anything at all. Or maybe you're like, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, so I have Hashimoto's and already do hormone replacement therapy, but I'd love to hear more about how to help the gut, because those are definitely issues too.
Yes, for sure. And it's good that you're thinking about that, because I always tell people that when we're talking about autoimmunity, we have to be looking at the gut first, because it's an autoimmune condition. It's an immune system issue.
Sure.
So, a lot of times we're always targeting the thyroid, which yes, it needs support for sure. But if we're not looking at the immune system, which means we're not looking at the gut, then we're missing a big piece of the puzzle for us. So we can definitely talk about that too. Anything else? Okay. So this is really small, so I apologize. I don't know if there's a way to zoom in, but if not, I'll be talking about it regardless. So I have these pillars on here. These are essentially the pillars of what I talk about with clients and what I get started with, because a lot of times, like when we think of gut and hormones, we want to just go straight to like, give me all the supplements, give me all the replacement therapy, give me all that stuff. But the truth is that for any of that to work, we have to actually get the foundations down. Because we could be taking medication, we could be taking all the supplements, but we have to remember that supplements are supplemental. So if we're not nailing these basic foundation things, we're not going to be able to actually have success with all the fancier things, fancier protocols that we all really want. So these are a lot of the basic things that I talk about with clients and that we have to nail down, especially in the beginning of when we work together, before we can really get into all of the, specifics of more supplements and things like that. So these are real kind of basic outlines, but we can certainly go into more detail. So we're always going to look at food as medicine. So when we talk about food, I'm always thinking about the doses of it. So if someone is like, well, I eat really well, but then we really get into it, it's like, well, maybe you're lacking in protein. Maybe you're lacking, or you're having a little too much of carb for this. I think the fitness industry has done a great job at like encouraging women to eat and eat enough, but we also have to know that there's a time and a place for if we eat, in a deficit where we're dieting, if we have a maintenance where we're eating just enough calories, or we're eating in a bulking phase, a gaining phase. So really, we talk about that with clients of what should we be doing right now. And with nourishment, we're always going to be talking about balanced meals, and what that means is always having a protein, a carb or a fiber, fat, and then vegetables. And the reason that we look at protein first is not just because, oh, it's good for muscle building, it absolutely is, but protein is actually really good at balancing your blood sugar. And when it comes to hormone issues or stalling and weight loss, a lot of that time is because we have dysregulation with our blood sugar throughout the day. And you might not be diabetic, but a lot of people are walking around pre-diabetic and they don't know that. So when we're tracking blood glucose, which we do with our clients, we're able to see like, wow, you're actually hanging out in higher levels. And it's a good thing that we saw this, because now we can talk about regulating that. So protein is going to stunt the spike of your glucose from carbohydrates and things like that. So we always talk about making sure we have enough of that. And then protein in itself is also satiating. So it's going to keep you fuller longer, which is, something that a lot of women are looking forward to, because they're like, I really need to snack a lot. So talking about that is helpful too. Whole foods based. So I always think about like, well, will my ancestors recognize what I'm eating? Do I even know what any of these ingredients are? There's a lot of health foods that are packaged that are really just a candy bar in disguise. A lot of protein bars nowadays, you're like, wow, this the macros are great, but goodness, look at the ingredients on here. Or, what types of sugars are they using? A lot of the sugar alcohols and things like that are disruptive to the gut. So you're trying to be healthy by eating a protein bar or having a meal replacement, but in the end, you're actually disrupting your gut microbiome in that process. So really trying to look at whole food sources as much as possible. And I have, protein bars and things like that from time to time, but I just really try to minimize how much of that I consume for myself, because I know that its effects on the gut in particular. Vegetables, we all know vegetables are great, important, we know that. However, if someone wants to take it a step further, or they're like, well, I don't really know what vegetables to have, or I don't really know how to prepare those things, I do like to refer to the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen list. Does anyone know what that is or has heard of that? Yeah. Some of us have, some of us haven't. So every year there's a Clean 15 and a Dirty Dozen list that comes out, and that is basically the list of organic produce that it has the least amount of pesticides, and then the list of produce that has the most amount of pesticides. So the Dirty Dozen are the ones that you would want to make sure that you buy organic if possible and or clean really well. So again, just taking it a step further of like, okay, well, we know we want to eat vegetables, but how can I maximize what I'm doing to also support my health? And then the other suggestion I have is eating locally and eating seasonally. So a lot of time, like this time of year, farmers markets are huge right now, so checking those out. And whatever is at the farmers market is what's in season. And those are typically grouped together at the grocery store as well. So, and the reason for that is because you're having more of those nutrients now. The less that a food had to travel to get to you, the more nutritious it's going to be. So that's why I really encourage doing farmers markets and having those local seasonal foods. And then animal protein, really looking at grass-fed, grass-finished, which is really important. Grass-fed meat and beef is great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't fed grain or anything else at all. So grass-finished is when it's 100% grass-fed its entire life. Grass-fed means that it was fed grass, but then it might be fed with something else right before they slaughtered it. So it doesn't always mean that it's 100% grass-fed. Pasture raised, those sorts of things. You want your animals to be happy and healthy because they're going to have better nutrients in them, and organic if possible. So again, these are just up-leveling stuff and just more education of what I give. So again, my background being a teacher, my job is to educate you, because I'm not going to be your coach the rest of your life. So I want you to have things that you can always refer back to and you have the knowledge moving forward. So any questions on the food, anything right now regarding that? We'll talk a little bit about the gut and things like that with it too. So with gut health food, and really gut health in general, there's a lot of talk about certain foods that are gut healthy foods. And what I always caution people of is the ones that are labeled that way, sometimes you need a lot more of what's in that food to actually be healthy, and also you need, it might also have different consequences. So what I mean by that is kombucha. Kombucha is a drink that got really, really popular. It's got great benefits. It's fermented. Yes, that's good for the gut. However, if you have something like a candida or a yeast overgrowth, or you're more prone to growing yeast, kombucha is not great for you. So just be very cognizant of a lot of the marketing that's done around food, because it's not always appropriate for you individually. And that's why I like to talk to my clients about it. Like I understand that that's really good, and like there's really good properties to that, but it's not good for you at this point because of your gut condition or whatever's going on. So, and then also with Hashimoto's, any other autoimmune condition, looking at food is going to be the most important thing when it comes to supporting the gut, because the gut lining becomes leaky, which I think a lot of us have heard of leaky gut. That's basically your lining, instead of being nice and tight, it's got some gaps in it, and so some antigens or toxins get into the bloodstream, and that's what causes inflammation. So in order to support that, you want to have gut healing foods, and a lot of those are going to be prebiotics. Probiotics kind of got their moment years ago, like just blew up, like everyone needs to be on a probiotic, but prebiotics are actually the most important thing when it comes to gut, because that actually is going to feed the bacteria that's already in your gut. Probiotics are actually adding bacteria in, but we want to feed the one that's already in there, so that's where prebiotics come in. So examples of foods like that would be for gut health is asparagus, leeks, kiwi is really good, pomegranate, just to kind of name a few, green onion. So there's a lot of bananas are good for that too. So there's a lot of foods that again we utilize to feed the gut bacteria before we even do anything with probiotics. Go ahead, question.
Can you take a prebiotic?
Yes, you can.
supplement?
Yes.
Is it as effective?
Yes, I actually usually recommend prebiotics over probiotics to clients, and there's a lot of them that are powdered, and they'll usually actually have kiwi in there because of that. The other thing to look at is there's a popular brand that kind of blew up in the last year. It's called Seed. It's a green label probiotic, and that's a pre and probiotic. So I do recommend that one too for just a basic one. And then tip on probiotics, you should rotate them at least every 6 months, because you don't want your gut to have the same type of bacteria. We need as much variety as possible in here, which is why eating a variety of foods is important. I think when it comes to health, we get in the habit of like, I'm gonna meal prep and I'm gonna eat the same thing every day because I know the macros, this works for me, it's easy. Well, what happens is we lose that variety of the food that we're eating, and our gut loses that variety too. It needs diversity, because there's so many different types of gut bacteria that if we lose that diversity of what we're eating, we're not feeding it properly. And that's where sometimes like the bloating and things like that come up. So food rotation is important too, and you could do that every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, I mean, whatever works for you. But that is something, again, keeping in mind, because I have a history of meal prepping, just, all my meals for every day of the week, and I just remember like I ate the same thing for probably 6 or 7 months. Like I never veered off of that. And now I'm like, I barely eat the same thing over and over again. Maybe like the same staples of things, but adding in different veggies and things like that is important. So, any questions off of what I just said now?
What was the powdered prebiotic with the kiwi that you mentioned that wasn't feed?
So there's a brand that I actually personally use and recommend to clients. It's Microbiome Labs. So if you get on their website, I'm almost positive you could buy it from their website. But they have I think it's called Mega Pre.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we'll get into supplements too, and like my view on them as well, but that is something, again, just like thinking about food and supplements, we want to make sure we're taking the right things for us in particular. So anything else on food before we move on to that? Okay, so sleep hygiene is another big pillar of what we talk about with our clients. We know sleep is important inherently. Some people are like, I get by with 4 hours of sleep and I'm great. That could be great for you, but we actually know that our body needs a lot of sleep. It's different to function off of sleep and actually optimize your sleep. So we talk about having consistent bedtimes and routines around bedtime. Right now, again, I have an 11-week-old. That does not exist for me, but before then it did, and I'll get to that again. But consistent bedtimes is really important, and why that is because it supports your circadian rhythm. Have we heard of circadian rhythm before? We have an idea what that is. That's our sleep-wake cycle, and that is dictated from the light that we get throughout the day. So natural light in the morning, Basically what happens is it enters the naked eye, so no sunglasses, trying to avoid contacts and glasses even if possible. The natural light from the sun, even on cloudy days like this, it still counts, enters our retina, goes and talks to our adrenals and tells us how much cortisol to produce. So cortisol is known as like that stress hormone, but cortisol is actually a hormone that's really important for anti-inflammation and regulating your circadian rhythm. So it's going to tell our body we need to make more cortisol, we should be up and alert, it's daytime. And then as the day goes on, cortisol should drop and melatonin should rise. They work inverse of each other. And that pattern of working and flowing and increasing then decreasing throughout the day is dictated by how much light we get throughout the day. So morning light's really important, even lunchtime, take a walk outside if you can, or step outside of your building and get some natural light exposure. It's gonna help regulate your body and tell your body what time of day it is, so your body can produce the hormones that it needs to wake up and then to go to sleep. Because basically when you get up in the morning and you get that natural cortisol rise, it's like a 12-hour countdown essentially to your body rising in melatonin so you can sleep at night. So again, there's this natural free medicine that we have to ourselves and we just aren't utilizing it in that way. Now you can start to think about it like that. Cooler temperatures, obviously important. Less clothing the better. Turning down your thermostat because your body temperature is going to rise as you sleep, and so you want to keep yourself as cool as possible so it doesn't rise super high. Blue light blocking glasses. How many of you have those already? Okay, a few of you. So blue light blockers during the day are great. They look like typical glasses. But then at nighttime, they have these other types that are amber tinted. So they're going to have yellow or orange or red lenses to them. So they look like orange glasses or red glasses. And that blocks out not only blue light, but green spectrum of light as well. So you're just blocking out additional spectrum of light. So again, a little bit nerdy on my side, but I got really into light a while ago and I thought it was really interesting. And also there's a local company in Cincinnati that sells them. It's called Midwest Red Light Therapy. The owner, Kyle, is great, so I always want to plug for him. If you want to get blue light blocking glasses, he has them. He has red light bulbs you can put into your house at night to keep lights low in the evening. My house is basically red at night. My neighbor was like, your house glows red at night. Do you know what that means? And I was like, not here in America. It's different countries that do that. But I have red light bulbs at night, keep the lights low, and then wearing blue light blocking glasses, especially in the evening time, because blue light is not bad. It's what the sun gives off. However, we don't want blue light at night because blue light is what stimulates that cortisol to rise. So at night, we want melatonin to be high. So we want to block that blue light from coming into our retina, which is why you wear the glasses. And I think if you're going to wear them at any point, definitely at night. Then again, if you're looking at a computer screen all day long, our phones give off blue light. Lights above give off blue light. Like lights now, like that's just how they all are. So we're always exposed to it, but we shouldn't be exposed to it past sundown. That's just not the way that we were, centuries ago. And then tracking sleep. That is something that, can be really helpful. There's a lot of devices that track sleep. I wear an Aura ring, which is the ring that I have on here. This is, same concept as like an Apple Watch, a Garmin, a Loop strap, things like that. Looking at heart rate is really important when I work with my clients, and also looking at respiratory rate and something called heart rate variability, your HRV. That's a really good indicator of what your nervous system is doing. So if we're looking at that, especially at night, when you have lower levels of an HRV, that to me tells me that your nervous system is not balancing out and not lowering the way that it should in the evening. So it's a good way to kind of indicate recovery and things like that. So we use different metrics to keep track of that with clients, just so that you have a better understanding of yourself. Any questions on sleep or comments on that? Yes.
So just a question, your Aura ring, is it connected somehow to a device?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of thought out there that having devices near you while you're sleeping, or even people are extreme and they'll turn off their Wi-Fi, or they'll have their phones outside of the room. So having, I don't sleep with my Apple Watch on me. I sleep with my phone as far away from me as possible. So having that ring on you, do you feel like it at some point interrupts your sleep pattern, or it can for certain people that maybe are sensitive to that?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Why I chose the Aura is because you can turn the Bluetooth off.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So you can put it on airplane mode all the time, and it'll still track
It
your
will
data,
still track
but
it, okay.
it doesn't upload to your app unless you turn it back on.
Nice. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's why I like that, because it's the same thing. my Wi-Fi router is downstairs, but there was a point where I was sleeping down there and I used to turn it off, because again, I don't want that stuff near me.
Right,
But you make a
absolutely.
good point. That's why I actually like the Auras, because you can turn it off and it'll still track.
Yeah.
And then once you turn it on and load it to your phone in the app, it'll show you the data.
Do you have a specific brand that you use?
There's different designs, but it's the Aura ring. I think it's like the Heritage type of ring, but there's
Okay.
different colors. Like I have it's like a matte black. They have a gold one now.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad you brought that up. Anything else about sleep?
A
Yes.
point on the Aura rings, once you start being menopausal and having night sweats, you can't wear them. Your
Oh,
hands will
really?
swell. Well, I
Okay.
mean, I shouldn't
Yeah.
say that. Many people
Yeah.
find that if you
Yeah.
start swelling.
That's a good idea.
Like even
That's a
my
good
watch
point.
will.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's actually a good like thing to consider. And because again, now like I used to wear it on this finger, and I'm almost to that point. But again, I'm still like swelling and coming down from being pregnant and losing that weight. But so I had to switch fingers. But that's good to keep in mind too for anyone else that would be in that position.
I guess you could get one the
Yeah,
largest
'cause I
size
can put
finger,
it- yeah,
and then
into
maybe
any
switch it to
fingers,
yours. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll send you a sizing kit first, so you
Okay.
can like play around with it and see which one works for you.
That's cool.
Yeah. Anything else on sleep? Okay. Stress management movement. I hate saying like managing your stress is really important, because obviously we know that, but doing it is nearly impossible in this day. So really, I got into breath work a couple years ago. It's something that I think I'm in it too, and I like to talk about with clients, is because it's accessible to everybody. Now, what we're all doing right now is not breathing, we're respirating. Because some people are like, well, I breathe fine. It's like, well, respiration is different. We're not even thinking about that. Thank goodness we don't have to think about that. We don't tell our body, like, breathe in, breathe out. But breath work is where you actually slow down and you're learning to move from a fight or flight state into a rest and digest state. And rest and digest state is where all the things that people have struggled with, that's what the state we need to be in for these things to improve. For example, if you have gut issues, hormonal issues, difficulty digesting, you're bloated, things like that, our body will optimize and work and it'll optimize all the functions it's supposed to when we are in a rest and digest state. So fight or flight is sympathetic state, sympathetic nervous system. Rest and digest is our parasympathetic. If we don't know how to get ourselves into parasympathetic state and rest and digest and relax, our body's not going to prioritize digesting food. Okay, think about it like this. Old hunter-gatherer days, you're out in the woods and you saw a bear. The bear's gonna come on, your sympathetic nervous system kicks on and you're like, I gotta get to safety. It's fight or flight. I'm not gonna fight this thing, I'm gonna flee. You get to safety, you come back down, you're relaxed, you're in parasympathetic mode. You're like, okay, good, I can rest. While you're running from that bear, is your body gonna prioritize digesting food? No, it's gonna send all the blood to your limbs so that you can run into your heart, so you can pump and you can move faster. Like, it's gonna prioritize that. It's not gonna prioritize digesting food, ovulating, any of that stuff that we are like, why isn't this happening? I'm not saying that breathing is your solution for everything, but it is a solution that we really overlook. We have to get ourselves into that parasympathetic nervous system. There's multiple ways to do that. I just mentioned breath work on here. Meditation, breath work is meditation. It's not about getting on a yoga mat and sitting in silence. Like, that doesn't have to be meditation for you. There's other ways to stimulate essentially the vagus nerve, which is a nerve that runs basically head to anus, and it connects, and it really touches on all those organs to bring them to calm down. So that's really something that I also talk about with clients, is what's gonna work for you? How do we get you to essentially calm the fuck down? Like, that's what we have to get you to do, because that's gonna be a key to having some of these things fall into place for you. And then movement. Movement is obviously important. If you're here, you obviously prioritize health and movement. You would be here if you didn't. So movement is definitely important. I'm a big proponent of strength training, especially for women of all ages. And strength training is for everybody at every stage. You might not be lifting as heavy or as quickly or as frequently as maybe you once were, but you should always, always, always be doing some resistance training. Doesn't matter if there's an injury, there's people that can help around that. One in this room, Jess, is a PT that I referred clients to. I've worked with her. Again, my fiance does personal training for the clients. He's also a neuromuscular therapist, so we have different ways to support clients physically as well, because that is just as important as all the other things that we're talking about. And I think women severely underestimate that from time to time. So there's a balance of like, is CrossFit better, is strength training better, is Pilates better, is yoga better? All of it works and all of it is appropriate. We just have to know when to push in other areas and when we can pull back. Because sometimes you gotta pull back from strength training, or you gotta pull back from the yoga, or you gotta pull back from this. But it doesn't mean that it's not appropriate for you in a good balance. And finding that balance is what we do together. Questions on movement or stress management, anything like that? Okay. Supplements, so we kind of talked a little about this. In my coaching, I recommend what is known as third-party tested supplements. Those are supplements that have been tested from different labs to show that what the label says is what's actually in the product. I do not usually recommend supplements that are just out at like a Target or a Kroger, sometimes even Whole Foods. Those aren't tested for things also like heavy metals, so arsenic, lead, cadmium. I'm an ingredient snob because I know that what I put in my body is going to affect all of the functions in here, and if I have control over what I put in my body, then I feel like I'm doing my best. And so in terms of supplements, I'm also a snob with those. So I recommend third-party tested products and companies. The one I just listed before, Microbiome Labs, is a good one that I like to recommend to clients. So I'm always going to recommend those. And I'm not someone that is going to be supplement happy where I'm giving you 14 new things to try. I think that we all have been there, we've done that, we try to, dose ourselves on those things. But I will recommend things that are important and I think are beneficial. So, just some ones for sleep support, some basic things to look into: magnesium, chamomile, ginger. Those are some teas I think are really great. Digestion support, ginger, fennel, peppermint. Other supplements for digestion is you want to look at your enzyme production. So this is where, again, for autoimmune conditions, it's important. For Hashimoto's in particular, most of us are really deficient in pepsin, which is an enzyme that our pancreas secretes. So if we're not making that, then we're not able to break down in particular protein. And again, we need protein because we need the amino acids to build muscles, to keep us satiated, balance our blood sugar. So again, looking at what does the person have that's going on and what are the most important things that they need. And digestion-wise, almost everyone needs support with digestion from the start. So enzymes and hydrochloric acid is really important because that is going to be stomach acid that our body is producing. So to give you an idea of why enzymes are important and why proton pump inhibitors I think need to be on the out for most people is our stomach should be very, very acidic and very fiery. Because when we eat our food, most of us are, not chewing thoroughly, let's be honest. So it's two chews, and then we swallow. These big globs of food sitting in our stomach for about 20 minutes. And in order to go down the GI tract and not have bloating or heaviness or, feeling really yucky, we need that food to be broken down into its simplest form. Short chain fatty acids for carbs, amino acids for proteins, things like that. So we have these big pieces of food, and if there's not enough acid in our stomach, it's not going to get broken down. So then you have these big pieces trying to go down this big GI tract, and it's going to be really uncomfortable. So we need to be adding acidity back into our system because we've lost that. Stress will decrease your stomach acid production. Autoimmune conditions will decrease that. Medications will decrease it. So lifestyle will decrease it. So by adding acidity back in through the concept of digestive enzymes, pancreatic enzymes, you're actually adding in that fire back in your stomach so you can break down your food and absorb its nutrients. Because I was on proton pump inhibitors for like 10 years. And when I learned that and I took the leap and I stopped taking it and I was like, I don't know. And I started taking enzymes, I was like, wow, I feel so much better. And so it was just, again, understanding that there's some things that we just aren't communicated with about. We're just like, take this medication, but really that actually is causing more of an issue, I think, for most people who don't have an actual medical reason to be on that. So again, with that though, food behavior is important. Chewing slowly, eating slowly, that's going to help also our digestion and also help our stomach acid be produced. Once it smells the food and tastes it on our tongue, that's when the enzymes get produced. So again, looking at digestive support is important.
Is it possible to overdo it with digestive enzymes, or are they considered pretty safe if you want to keep trying a little bit more?
Yeah, they are going to be safe. What I would say is you can usually tell that you've done too much when you start to get acid reflux. So there's a particular brand that I like. It's called Thorne. I like their enzymes and their the digestive enzymes. And the bottle I think is take up to 2 with each meal. And sometimes I just have people start with, to do one with each meal and then move up, dose it yourself. If you get to the point where you have acid reflux, you know you've taken too much. So then you would take one less of that. Yeah, that's a good question.
Is there a way to do it through like food, or is it just supplement based with enzymes?
So enzymes is something that our body's supposed to be doing. So what you want to do again is getting that rest and digest state. So that's where your body's going to know like, oh, we're eating something. We should be producing these enzymes to break down this food. So primarily you want to focus in on your behavior and your state while you're eating. So eating in a calm state, not eating in the car, eating relaxed, chewing your food thoroughly, being with people. That's gonna be the best outcome of what you are in control of. And then enzymes are really like an additional support to that. But there's also seasons of taking enzymes. Like I am taking them now, but I didn't take them for 6 months before. Like if I know that I'm in a more stressful season, I'm not eating as well, or I'm not eating as slowly, like I'll bring them in for support, but you don't have to be on them all the time. It's more of a like bring in and take out as you need. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Anything else about that? Okay. And then energy, a lot of people are into like mushrooms. There's mushroom coffee, there's mushroom all these things now. I think they're great for sure. I'd be very cognizant of the brands that you use. Also making sure that, particularly if you are eating gluten-free, making sure that you are getting a gluten-free one, because mushrooms in this scenario are grown on oats. And so, or they're mixed with oats as well. They're mixed with oats, and so a lot of times you want to make sure that they are certified gluten-free if you do have an autoimmune condition. So just making sure that's the situation, because surprisingly, not all of them are. So adaptogens are herbs that are help your body adapt to stress. That's why they're called adaptogens. They can be very, very beneficial and helpful. Certain ones you take, you can take any point for however long. Other ones you want to do certain times, certain periods of time. So those are things that I like to incorporate. Definitely helpful for energy, especially like maybe taking adaptogens in the morning if you're someone that's struggling to get up. Again, you're getting your natural light, but you still need a little support. Adaptogens in the morning can be really beneficial. So time of day matters for that too. And then electrolytes. So those have kind of come into the light now, and electrolytes is really, really important. I'm really glad for that. One way to think of electrolytes and why they're important to drinking them for water is most of us probably drink water, right? Maybe we don't drink enough, maybe we drink a lot, whatever. When you're drinking just plain filtered water, I call that flat water. There's no charge to it. But in order to add charge to it so that your cells can open up and absorb the water, you want to add electrolytes and minerals to them. So we're talking about magnesium, chloride, we're talking about potassium. So you want to add those things in the form of either drops or, Element is a big one. Under the gym sells that. I sell that with clients too. Liquid IV is a popular one. There's different types. But when you're adding electrolytes to water, you're charging it. You're adding the minerals that got filtered out, so that way your body can actually absorb the water. So it's different to like kind of have water, for lack of a better description, floating underneath your skin versus actually absorbing it into your cells. Because filtered water, yes, we want it to be filtered, but they're also filtering out the minerals. And the soil that we have now is not as rich as it used to be years and years and years ago. So we don't have as many minerals in our food even, and in our water. So you want to add those back in, and now there's fancy ways to do it with like electrolyte packs, which are basically what Gatorade should have been but isn't. So, yeah.
And if we want to do that without buying the fancy packs, just real sea salt and water do the same thing?
Yep, I'm glad you
Okay.
said that. So I like Celtic sea salt or Redmond's real salt. Those are two brands that you can find in grocery stores or online. Doing about 1/8 of a teaspoon of those in water is a really good way to add electrolytes back to your water. You can add some lemon juice in there too. But I usually always start my day, and I recommend clients start the day with sea salt in their water with maybe lemon or a squeeze of lime, because lime actually contains potassium. So you're getting a natural form of an electrolyte in that way. Any questions or any other comments? Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know where I'm at time. What time is it?
12:40.
Okay, perfect. All right, so, okay, yeah, so I'm over on time. Any questions? I just want to do a quick rundown on kind of like an idea of what I do, what I talk about with clients, maybe answer some questions, give you something to think about for yourself. Or maybe there's someone that you know that like could benefit from this information to share. But any questions? Yes.
One quick question, going back to the, you were talking about enzymes, but more
Yeah.
specifically talking about acid in the gut to help
Yes.
break down foods. What is your thought on, because a lot of people are very overly acidic,
Yeah.
and it's their whole body that's acidic, and the thought is that cancer can actually survive in an acidic
Yep.
environment, and trying to get like even more like alkaline water into your body,
Mhm.
obviously at a certain pH.
Sure.
But what's your thought on that? Is it more taking an enzyme or taking something just briefly just to help
Yeah.
break down any food that people don't digest because people inhale food and they don't chew it properly?
Yeah.
Or, so what's your thoughts on that? Just trying to keep your whole entire body environment away from being too acidic?
Yeah, I think if someone knows that they are acidic in that way, then
Yeah.
sure, be cognizant of like the types of enzyme you're using and the frequency of it. I think that you have to have hard data to say that you are that before you jump to that thing.
Right.
But so that's why again, like cycling these things in and out is important.
Yeah.
Because I have some clients that are really into like the alkaline water and things like that, and they say that they feel better and that's great.
Yeah.
But they still also really benefit from enzymes too, so it's kind of like a
Absolutely.
like, are you neutralizing it at that point? I think it depends on the person, but I would
For
make
sure.
sure. And when it comes to like the cancer stuff, that's more where like the detoxification pathways conversation starts for me. Of like, are your detox pathways open? And that's where a lot of the testing that we do comes in.
Yeah.
So that's where like for me that'd be more of a concern in looking at that versus like using the enzymes for that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just to wrap up quickly, like I said, at Holistically Restore, we work with people on primarily hormone, gut, weight management, thyroid health. We do work in packages. We want to give you a comprehensive plan, and then we check in every couple weeks to make sure that we're supporting you and you get the support you need. We do functional medicine testing, so we will test hormones, gut, we can do food sensitivities, and also blood work as well. We look at those because we get better ideas of what's going on underneath the hood. So perhaps, the reason that you feel really inflamed or you have a lot of gut issues is because there's an imbalance of good bacteria to bad bacteria in your gut. So we can take a look at that. We can take a look at if you have parasites, if you have yeast overgrowth, if you have enough enzymes. There's actually a marker on the test that we take or that we use that shows your enzyme production. Looking to see if you have if your gut is having a reaction to wheat. Doesn't mean that you'd be celiac or anything like that, but it'll show if your gut's actually having a reaction to wheat. So that concrete data is really helpful for people because it gives them more of like, man, I'm not crazy. Like I knew something was going on. And then hormone testing, we look at what your sex hormones are and their metabolites, which means how is your body moving and utilizing hormones. It's different to look at blood work and just say, oh, this is my testosterone level. But with the Dutch test, which is what I use, you get to see how your body's utilizing that and how it's processing out. So for example, estrogen is a hormone that has 3 metabolites, and we get that out through our liver. So we get to see if your liver is actually flushing those out appropriately. Cortisol levels throughout the day, because again, it changes throughout the day. So that test also takes a look at your cortisol pattern throughout the day to give you an idea of like, man, like I knew that I was really tired at this point, or maybe I have high cortisol all day long and that's why I feel really wired and stressed all the time. Or you're just so exhausted that your cortisol is a flat line instead of having a curve. So again, hard data is just really helpful for people who are doing a lot of the right things, but they still feel stuck. So we like to utilize that just to give you a better understanding of what's going on under the surface, write your programming for that, and then support you along the way through coaching. So, any questions? I didn't want to take up too much more time, but I wanted to give you a quick rundown as to what we do.
If I could just put in a plug for Evie that I love that she uses James as like that movement piece because it does bring in the behavioral, like all supporting the lifestyle factors that you need in order to support like the insides, like your gut and hormones and all of that.
Yeah,
Because it's super important.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know again, like there's only so much I can say about strength training is important. This is really important, but having that program for clients is really good too because he knows what's going on from like a gut inflammation perspective because we'll all talk about it and then he can say whether this type of workout is appropriate for you at this point. So it really just kind of gets a whole encompassed picture for you and then program for you as well. And then he, again, being a neuromuscular therapist, is really, his breath work is his bread and butter. He's also a licensed massage therapist. So he uses movement and massage to help people who are in pain and or need to move better, have limited mobility, things like that. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming in here today. We've got a break from the outside heat too. Thanks for coming to the expo in general. And again, I'm out there too, so feel free to come by and talk to us. My baby's out there, so and James is out there as well. So thank you. It's nice to meet you all. Thank you, everyone.